Teachers should not be forced to teach in person during a pandemic.
Should not we be looking at the World Health Organization and the CDC to make such a decision?
The American Religious Town Hall is now in session.
Welcome, friends, to the American Religious Town Hall meeting, where the discussion of religious, political, and social issues is meant to promote the cause of religious freedom and to help us better understand each other. And now, here's your host and moderator, Pastor Jerry Lutz.
I'm James Weingartner, in for Jerry Lutz. We have reduced the number of our panelists, and we're working in the pandemic time to create social distance and to still bring you a program with engaging thoughts and to bring you around. We'd like to introduce you to these panelists today. We'll begin with Reverend Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom Plumbley. I'm the senior minister at First Christian Church in Fort Worth, Texas. Our congregation is a part of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ.
I'm Bishop Michael Olson, and I serve as the Bishop of the Roman Catholic Diocese of Fort Worth, Texas.
My name is Canon John Peterson. I am a priest in the Episcopal Church, and I'm canonically resident in the Diocese of Washington, D.C.
Hi, I'm Carl Trovall. I'm professor of ethics and history at Concordia University in Austin, Texas.
Thank you. Our subject today is about teachers and their opportunities and maybe requirements to teach during the pandemic. When a pandemic rages with local and regional spikes, multiple waves of infection, and widespread uncertainty about the disease's long-term effects and patterns of spread, schools play a central role. Whether a school district opens its campuses in person for learning or not affects not only the infectious disease control and healthcare systems, but also the ability of workers to go to work. One online education learning is effective for short periods, but nearly all students seem to learn better in the classroom. And students from poorer socioeconomic backgrounds suffer the most when they can't learn in person. But what about the dangers to teachers? When many school districts opened in the fall of 2020, hundreds of teachers were faced with a dilemma: return or be fired. The difficulty remaining safe behind masks and barriers, of maintaining social distancing and being assured of daily sanitation caused many to balk at returning. Others found it unduly dangerous because of the compromised health of family members back home. Without a federal mandate, each state, county, city, district, and an individual school is handling the situation differently based on state orders, district decisions, parental and student local input, and in some cases, individual school and principal directives. But regardless of those decisions, individual teachers are making their own decisions. Sometimes those decisions have been to resign. Question 1, during a pandemic, is it fair to force teachers to work in person if they don't feel safe doing so? 2, how many teachers in your local area have disagreed with an order to return to school or to remain closed? And 3, are sick leave, furloughs, and other options available to be helpful? And so our discussion begins with Carl.
Yeah, my wife is a teacher. Many of my close friends are teachers. I'm a teacher at the university level, and so this is a topic that's dear to my heart, and it's vexing to me, to be honest with you, because, I could take an extreme approach, meaning I have one friend who told me opening schools is premeditated murder. They know what's going to happen. People are going to die, and or bring it to someone who's going to die, and it's irresponsible to open schools. Well, that's, that is the extreme statement right there, right? And one can understand that. And your opening statement, I think, kind of laid out some of the really problems with this, is that the spread of a disease in any given community is going to look different than in other communities. So the approach maybe has to have differences of approach in the particular area. But I do think that if teachers are going to go back in person, I think that you have to have all the safety precautions necessary and in place for people to feel safe. Just as like you go to the grocery store, we've got safety precautions. There's risk, but there are those things that are set up. I think schools even more so need to have that because of the possibility of community spread through the school. There are 4 million K-12 teachers in the United States. There's 1.3 million university teachers. And now I teach at the university, and our university has taken an approach called HighFlex, in which students have the option of either coming or not coming. And the first 3 weeks, we were all required to do it virtually. And I would say with college students, I think it's a little bit easier. All of us would agree that we're not really crazy about teaching online, but I mean, this is the social reality, so we're going to do it. I just taught a class here, and I asked my students, I said, I have this program coming up. I mean, what do you think about online teaching? And one student just said, well, it sucks. The students are not happy with it either, and many aren't. But I guess what was nice about our university is that it gave us really the option. And if any of us were compromised health-wise, we didn't have to teach in person. What we've found happens, at least at our university, is that the students have decided just not to show up at all. I mean, we gave them the option, and they all said, I think I'm just going to stay home. And so we have very few people. So it's easy to social distance. But again, our situation is very different than someone who you have mandates. I mean, schools, districts are getting paid by the number of students who show up. So it as an economic issue, pressure here. I think there's also the pressure on administrators. This has forced everyone to think more technologically about if you're going to keep teachers safe and they're going to teach through technology. Well, do you even have the ability and systems to teach that way? And to what extent has the leadership in the district been ahead of the ball and say, we're going to do a worst case scenario and we're going to totally transform our technology? Or they're going to say, let's just sit and wait and see what happens in the fall, because those are two very different responses. One I think is irresponsible, the other I think is, more responsible. But again, I mean, I'm not making those calls, so it's easy for me to be judgmental on it. So I could say a lot, but I'm just going to stop right there.
Okay, thanks. John?
I want to affirm certainly what we've just heard, because what Carl has said was, I did a short little survey amongst some teachers and parents of teachers that I know at home. And they are affirming everything that you said, Carl, and the type of struggles that they are facing in making those types of decisions. I think that one thing that most people can agree upon is because there is not a federal mandate. There's nothing that's come down from the federal government. Leaving it to each state, county, city, and district and individual schools in handling the situation. And as a result, each situation is being handled differently. There's no one size fits all in this type of a situation, and particularly without the guidance of a federal mandate. As a result, most people are turning their attention, or most schools, I suspect, and Carl, you are in a much better position to know this than I, but both to the World Health Organization, the WHO, as well as the CDC, and to try to come to have an understanding of what their guidelines are in this type of situation. For example, the World Health Organization, in dealing with staff with underlying health conditions in the school, they have simply said, and I'm going to quote, adults 60 years and older and people with underlying health conditions are at a higher risk for severe disease and death. The decision to return to a teaching environment depends upon the individual and should include consideration of local disease trends, as well as measures being put in schools to prevent further spread. And it's that type of a mandate that teachers that I know are following in relationship to how we are going to act and behave. But once again, complicated, because even the CDC sometimes is in disagreement with the WHO and vice versa. So it's not even a clear message that comes out from all the different sources in relationship to how we are to handle a particular situation right now in the pandemic.
Thank you, John. In our parochial school system, the parents have essentially demanded that we take their kids back. Bishop?
I haven't demanded that you take your kids back, but I think this is, I think teaching's an essential service, all right? And especially it's a time-sensitive service, that it's not just simply the conveyance of information, which is part of it, but it's not the entirety of it. And especially in earlier years of childhood development, there are windows of opportunity. And so the education of the child for the sake of the entirety of their life has certain time-sensitive qualities where attendance, socialization, participation are very much essential. And so a risk has to be weighed against that as well. There's also things to consider, like what's the supervision of the children at home? What are some of the mental health concerns involved in teachers and parents? Parents being able to keep their jobs, as well, if they need their kids in school. There's also a chance of better education, much more. And so with that in mind, I'm not sure a federal mandate, by definition, it's a mandate, it's not a counsel. All right, and so if you're mandating it, you're saying that at the level of subsidiarity, at the most local level, they're incapable of making these decisions, when precisely CDC says as well, you have to keep in mind what are the local trends. And, and so what we've discovered, we have 19 schools in 28 counties. And each school is its own community. We have inner city schools, center city schools. We have schools in the country, rural schools, suburban and hybrids. So fortunately, our principals, our teachers, in consultation with public health people, public health experts from the universities, have enabled us to make decisions at the most local level, but overseen at the diocesan level as far as for safety. We've found that we have not had a spread. We have followed the protocols. The protocols are key, and following them is key. It's not just a matter of having them, but really enforcing them strictly. They work, all right, and they work as well with a flexible option for online learning and in-school learning, or a combination thereof. Parents got the first choice, but then when COVID comes into the picture, then they're quarantined, and members of the household are quarantined. So it involves a lot of vigilance, all right? But key for teachers, especially, 2 points. First, the responsibility to be a teacher is an imbalanced situation, with the priority going to the students as the more vulnerable person in that. So it's not a job like other jobs, and it's an essential job as well. The second point is also, though, because of that essential character, everything needs to be taken to make it as safe as possible. Mask wearing, the protocol, sanitizing, social distancing, and that requires an intentional and enforced change in behavior for the sake of all, but especially for those who are most vulnerable. And we owe an incredible debt of gratitude to our teachers who've been flexible in accommodating the safety protocols for the sake of them being able to live out their vocation effectively and with joy.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. I really appreciate the Bishop's outlining of that entire set of protocols that you were talking about. I would simply add one adjective to the things you were thanking teachers for, and that is for being creative. I've seen amazing creativity by teachers in learning how to teach online, and this is at all levels. This is from pre-K through college level. people learning how to relate to their students that only see them through a screen, and that's really pretty wonderful. I think we also need to pay real attention to this designation of who essential workers are. We just immediately designated a whole list of people in our culture back in April, I guess, of 2020. We said, well, check mark, check mark, check mark, check mark. All of these people must work. We put it in terms of get to work, but it was really these folks must. And we did not name teachers, but then soon we began to, and really we have said that. And one of the things that's resulted in I know Fort Worth Independent School District. Now, people hear me and the bishop talk about Fort Worth, and folks think of it as a small town. It's the 13th largest city in the United States. Okay, this is a huge place. It is the Fort Worth Dallas Metroplex, by the way, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And don't forget Arlington.
And the first thing that happened when Fort Worth ISD said you got to go back to in-person teaching is there was this whole wave of teacher retirements. Because they simply had to. They had a child at home that if they brought the disease home to the child, results could be catastrophic. They had a parent at home. And yet, on the other side of things, we started calling them essential workers in the same way that folks that stock our grocery shelves and folks that that deliver gasoline to us and folks that work in healthcare industries are essential workers that they really needed to in order that other parts of the economy could function. In this case, in order that other people could go back to work because the teachers were taking their those folks' children off their hands. I work at I volunteer and have for years at a school in a very socioeconomically depressed sector of Fort Worth, Oak Lawn Elementary School. I was talking with the principal just the other day, and she said that she had already lost 4 teachers in that one elementary school. 2 in the summer and 2 since the summer. And oh, by the way, there are no substitutes. There are no substitute teachers now. Nobody wants to go in for that kind of pay under those kind of circumstances of being a substitute. So she said every day it's juggling how to put classes together, how to quarantine this group or that group if the COVID shows up. It's every day it's radically different in terms of the groupings within that school.
Carl? There are a couple other issues I think that are important to consider, and that is the impact upon our communities that don't have as much wealth, right? I mean, in a wealthy district, it's going to look very different from one where maybe some of the students don't even have electronic ability to connect with a teacher. And so, I mean, we have this, on top of that, we have that issue. I don't know that that's been laid out. Students needing lunches. They're not getting fed at home. They need to be in school because that's the only place that they're being sustained.
Huge issue.
Yeah.
Huge issue.
And But I do want to say this, and that is that the teachers I've talked to, a lot of them are thinking about retiring. But to be clear, there's a bunch of teachers too who are like, I'm in this because it's my vocation. This is my calling. The person who's most important to me is my student. And they really want to work hard to be able to teach their students. And all they're looking for genuinely is support from their district and their principals and those who are in leadership to figure out the safe ways to allow them to teach. Because they understand we're all crimped, but they want to serve.
Let's go to a break, and we're going to come back for the summations.
We hope you are enjoying today's program. If you would like to learn more about the American Religious Town Hall, please visit our website at americanreligious.org. That's americanreligious.org. There you can read about the mission and history of the program, learn about the Town Hall estates, and view past programs by clicking the appropriate menu buttons. Each week, Pastor Lutz looks forward to receiving your letters. You may write to him at the address shown on your screen. Send your letters to Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. That's Pastor Jerry Lutz, American Religious Town Hall Meeting, P.O. Box 180118, Dallas, Texas 75218. Thank you for writing, and thank you for watching. And now, back to you and today's closing statements.
Welcome back. We're really into a subject here that we've been discussing during the break some more. It's a fascinating subject and an important one for members of our faith communities who have to teach. And we're going to sum up now with beginning with Tom.
Thank you. I would simply submit that one of the things that's happening is that we've diluted the pool of good teachers by encouraging or forcing early retirements, and I think that's a shame. I think that the issue affects so many parts of our economy, however, that this is an important one for every community to face.
John?
I'm the only non-Texan on this panel today. And I'm going to raise this even as a question for you to be able to respond to. But in the Texas Tribune, which I understand is published in Austin, on October 20th, was an article entitled, "Texas Schools Tells Teachers with Medical Risks That They Must Return to the Classrooms During the Pandemic." And in the newspaper article, it goes on to say that teachers who were being called back to school were those who had pre-existing conditions like a pregnancy, chronic bronchitis, susceptibility to pneumonia, chemotherapy for breast cancer. Now, we heard a pretty positive response to what private schools are doing. But here, in this article here, a very different picture was being painted in relationship to what a public school is doing in the Austin area.
Yeah, well, and just to respond, I think that a couple of my friends, that's exactly their concern. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, is that it isn't just that healthy teachers, young teachers are being asked to return to school, but people with pre-existing conditions or who have kids with special needs are being forced to come back, really putting them in a tremendous bind because they don't want, well, I mean, yeah, I just would reaffirm it. This gets to be kind of scary, and you wonder how much you just wonder how much the system can sustain before people. I mean, I'm frightened about the teacher shortage that's ahead. I mean, I guess positively, maybe we'll all appreciate educators a little bit more. This is the kind of tragedy, is that at the end people go, wow, the teachers were essential service. They weren't just, these people who are have an easy job and they just go teach a little bit and then come home and then they have their summers off and it's this cushy job, that it actually is a kind of essential service. And I really do want to repeat again that The teachers I know, though, they really do have a sense of calling, and they really would like to be able to teach kids, and they want to be able to do that, and but they want to be able to do it safely and with a way that doesn't put them at risk for their health. It isn't a desire not to work or not to be effective in society.
Bishop?
All very good points that have been made, and I think, John, especially you're making the point on the vulnerable teachers, pre-existing conditions, those who are chronically ill, those who also are undergoing chemotherapy, and or even have people at home undergoing chemotherapy. That's the other thing. I think flexibility is key on this. I think in a key mode for flexibility is measure twice, cut once. And in preparation for an administrative decision on this, the initial response to COVID was a lot of reaction on the part of government officials, on the part of even health officials, because we really didn't know what we're dealing with. And you want to be as safe as possible, and people have so many fears. But as time has gone on and we've been able to deal with this, and we've seen the real effects of the spread as we've passed through it, we've learned something along the way, and that is the sense of measuring twice, cut once, and that the nature of what really is essential. You know, the word essential comes from essence, which means nature, and especially what helps human beings, first of all, with their basic needs to survive and their basic needs to flourish, you know, and I think Maslow articulated those as well for us, but it involves religion, it involves the worship of God, it involves education and faith formation, it involves basic health, physical and psychological, and teachers play a key component in that. But the flexibility that's required of all of us in distributing essential services also have to take care of the vulnerable who are offering those services, like the teachers you mentioned quite heroically, you know, and so compensation perhaps and sick leaves, et cetera, has to be considered.
Thank you. You know, the other one that we touched kind of tangentially is that feeding problem. I don't know how many people know how dependent the children of the United States are for the feeding that they receive at breakfast and lunch at school, and many districts even pound them up for their evening meal. The charter of the American Religious Town Hall provides that Roman Catholics, Protestants, Jews, educators, and others may appear on this program and declare their beliefs without hesitancy. And the rest of the members of the panel will uphold and guarantee that American right to all who will appear, irrespective of race or creed, so that the rest of the world can see that here in America we believe in civil and religious freedom not only in theory, but in reality. Now, friends, until next week, at the same time and over the very same channel, the American Religious Town Hall meeting stands adjourned. And may the God of all of us bless all of you.